This story is about freedom being dismantled in silence, without a declaration of war and without a single shot fired. About a choice that is being gradually taken from you, not seized by force, but simplified until at some point it no longer exists. About an architecture built over your city, invisible yet as dense as a grid of coordinates. And about the people who first glimpsed its framework and understood one simple thing. Your own home has ceased to be a point of stability. It has become a sector with a limit. What is at stake is not fines or yet another tightening of traffic rules. What is at stake is the ability to live in your own city as if it were your own home. To go where you need, to see those you want, to disappear into a crowd, to remain opaque to outside interest. The subjects of this story will see how the familiar route to their children's school becomes a loop, how the ring road becomes the only permitted route, how a fine for crossing a district boundary turns out to be not a punishment, but a loyalty test. They will be shown blueprints, a schedule by which they are permitted to go out, a limit on life expressed as a specific number of days, virtual barbed wire rising from the ground on a server's command, and a second kind, financial, where money stops being money and turns into a voucher valid only within the radius of its sector. They will see that this architecture is already assembled, tested, and waiting only for the signal to launch, and that the signal may come under any pretext that seems sufficiently convincing. They will see how thin the line is between a comfortable city and a hermetically sealed box with no exit. But what would you do if you noticed that your own city had stopped being yours, and every morning you are silently returned less and less space? What matters more, the calm of a subscription to ready-made comfort or the inconvenient freedom to go where you are told not to? And what will you do yourself on the day you discover that leaving your home suddenly requires authorization? Listen, this story is about exactly that. Do you hear that piercing screech of metal on metal? No, this is not a scheduled pipeline repair or yet another residential construction site. Right now, while you are safe inside your own home, a genuine guerrilla war is playing out on the streets of London and Oxford. Figures in balaclavas, armed with ordinary angle grinders, are methodically destroying surveillance camera poles, one after another, block by block. It looks like footage from a dystopian thriller or a chronicle of street confrontation. Yet the reason for what is happening is banal enough to give you chills. This is not a war for territory, not a struggle for resources. This is a fight for the elementary right to drive to the next street without requesting permission from the city server. Perhaps you think England is far away, their problems don't concern you, and you are perfectly safe. Open a map of your own city, Moscow, Astana, or Yekaterinburg. Look closely at the familiar interchanges, bridges, district boundaries. Now overlay that map with an invisible digital grid dividing the city into sectors. And imagine that your access to the neighboring sector, to the store, to work, to your parents, is determined not by your desire, but by a record in a database. To turn any modern city into a restricted zone, walls are not needed. One software update is enough, and that code has long since been written. In the next hour, I, as a correspondent from the front lines of the digital front, will take you where civilians are usually not allowed. We will not listen to the soothing speeches of urban planners about ecology and walkability. We will crack open the black box of the modern city hall and take apart piece by piece the architecture its designers call the zero trust concept. This is a new model of reality in which the presumption of innocence has been abolished. You are a suspect by default, and your freedom of movement is not an inalienable right, but a temporary privilege revoked with a single button press. Welcome to the digital cage. Ground zero of this conflict is Oxford, United Kingdom, in the dead of night. The damp air is saturated with the smell of char and a sharp sense of anxiety. A group of activists, already dubbed Blade Runners by the press, wield powerful green lasers, blinding the lenses of automatic number plate recognition systems. In the distance, the sirens of police units wail as they rush toward the scene. It is here, on these dark, wet streets, that the 15-minute city concept has met its first physical resistance. Look closely at these people. These are not outcasts or professional criminals. They are family fathers, small business owners, taxi drivers. They are deliberately risking real prison sentences for damaging state property. Why do they do it? Because they were the first to feel the noose of smart regulation tightening around their throats. For them, a camera pole is not a safety instrument, it is a guard tower. They understand. If today the camera merely issues a fine, tomorrow it will block your exit from the district when you exhaust your carbon allowance. And this is no exaggeration. In 2023 alone, damage from the deliberate destruction of cameras in London exceeded hundreds of thousands of pounds sterling. Authorities classify what is happening as vandalism, but sociologists see in it a symptom of the deepest breakdown of trust between citizen and state. People are physically demolishing smart city infrastructure because it has stopped serving them and started hunting them. This is the body's response to a foreign object, an attempt to cut out the digital tumor before it metastasizes. Let us understand exactly what they are fighting. ANPR technology, automatic number plate recognition, does not merely record speeding violations. This system scans millions of vehicles every day, creating a detailed digital log of your life. Where you drove on Friday evening, which clinic you parked outside, who you gave a lift to on the way home. According to official protocols, this data is stored in databases for up to years. 2 years of your life are digitized and open for analysis by any official with the appropriate clearance. This is no longer road enforcement. It is total digital profiling. Oxford, meanwhile, is merely a testing ground. The mechanism being refined on its streets is designed for global reach. The 15-minute city concept was developed by Franco-Colombian scholar Carlos Moreno, and in his original vision, it sounded like an urban utopia. Everything you need within walking distance. That sounds beautiful, doesn't it? Yet this idea was officially adopted by the Zurich Cities Network, an alliance of mega-cities controlling a quarter of the global economy. And in their hands, the idea of accessibility mutated into the idea of restriction. Instead of building schools closer to homes, they preferred to prohibit you from traveling to schools in other districts. A monstrous substitution of concepts is occurring here. They are selling you a prison cell wrapped in a cozy studio apartment. Convenience becomes freedom's greatest enemy. For if you have no reason to leave the district, a ban on leaving is only a matter of time. The logic of bureaucracy is merciless and inexorable. Any instrument of control will be used to its limit. If a barrier exists, it will eventually come down. If a camera stands, it will inevitably start issuing fines. We are watching urbanism transform into a tool of military containment of one's own population. Smart poles, traffic sensors, restricted access zones. This is dual-use infrastructure. In peacetime, it counts traffic jams. In crisis, it blocks the movement of the unwanted. The protesters in Oxford grasped this logic before most people. They are smashing cameras not out of love for chaos, but out of fear of a future where leaving home will require a QR code issued by an algorithm. We stand on the threshold of a fundamental shift. The city no longer belongs to its residents. It belongs to data operators. And your route is no longer your choice, but a variable in an optimization equation. While sirens wail on Oxford streets, here in the metropolis's traffic control center, a dead, air-conditioned silence reigns. This is the nerve center of the urban war, resembling a sterile operating theater. The operator does not see people. He does not smell the char. Before him is a giant video wall on which the city is laid out in data layers. Heat maps, traffic flows, cellular tower activity. This is the view of a security systems architect. To him, you are not a citizen with rights, but a mobile object with a unique identifier generating a load on the network. The key question resolved in this room sounds like a paradox. How do you suppress a million-strong riot or blockade an entire district without a single shot fired and without armored vehicles? The answer lies at the operator's fingertip. The 15-minute city concept is not about convenient shops within walking distance. It is the introduction of the military zero-trust doctrine into civilian infrastructure. In the past, blockading a city required concrete barriers and companies of soldiers. Today, it is enough to change a single line of code, and the city itself becomes a trap for its own residents. Look at the screen. Do you see the pulsing red lines outlining the city blocks? This is geofencing technology, a virtual perimeter, invisible barbed wire. The moment your smartphone, the onboard computer of your vehicle, or your smartwatch crosses this digital boundary without the proper digital mandate, the system reacts immediately. This is not cyberpunk fiction. It is a standard protocol already deployed in municipal management systems from London to Dubai. The response mechanism is automated to the point of mercilessness. Unauthorized crossing of the virtual perimeter triggers not only an alarm to the police dispatch, but also the instant deduction of a fine from your account, or, far more seriously, the cancellation of your digital pass for the following day. Geofencing turns a district's administrative boundary into a prison wall that cannot be climbed, since it exists only on City Hall servers. But the consequences of colliding with it are absolutely real. But what if you decide to break through physically? The system's architects have an answer for that scenario as well. Smart traffic lights in modern pilot zones are not merely traffic regulators. They are locking sluices. Programmed into them is a special mode that engineers call quarantine or containment. The operator enters a command, and traffic lights across the entire perimeter of your district simultaneously switch to red or begin changing phases chaotically, firmly blocking every exit. You find yourself in a traffic jam created specifically for you. Your car is pinned in a flow of metal, and you will not move until the system decides to release you. This is the tactic of the smart concentration camp, using the city's own infrastructure against its residents. Roads built to connect begin to divide. Technologies created to accelerate life are used to freeze it completely. You sit in your car cursing the traffic with no idea that this jam is the result of a script launched in this cold room. If you think that Western democracies would never go to such extreme levels of control, look to the east, where that future has already arrived. China's Skynet system is the benchmark that security architects worldwide aspire to. 600 million cameras. Think about that number. 600 million lenses united in a single neural network. But it is not the quantity that frightens. It is the processing speed. The system needs just 1 second to find a specific face in the crowd at a packed stadium or a busy railway station. Skynet does not merely register a face. It builds a three-dimensional skull topology, analyzes gait and micro-expressions. Hiding from such surveillance is physically impossible. A hood, dark glasses, or a surgical mask have long ceased to be obstacles for modern computer vision algorithms. The moment you step out of your building entrance, you have already been counted. The system tracks you door to door, recording every step, every pause at a shop window, every encounter with an acquaintance. Your privacy is dead. You simply haven't been notified of the funeral date yet. In these halls, an atmosphere of cold, technical admiration reigns. The engineers see no tyranny in what is happening. They see perfect order. For them, the chaos of human life is an error in the code that must be fixed. They are building a digital utopia where crimes are prevented before they occur and traffic flows with flawless precision. But the price of this efficiency is your subjectivity. In such a system, there is no presumption of innocence, only a presumption of potential threat. We are witnessing the fusion of physical reality with digital code. In the past, restricting freedom of movement required building the Berlin Wall. Today it is enough to enter a red zone into a database. And most alarming of all, this wall cannot be torn down with a sledgehammer the way the Germans did in Tonti cannot bulldoze an algorithm. You don't even see your jailer because he is hidden behind the interface of a convenient city application. The technical architecture of total control is already built. Cameras hang, servers hum, algorithms train on terabytes of data about your habits. The trap is ready and the door has snapped shut. But every prison needs an ideological justification. Why lock people into their districts? With what higher purpose can digital serfdom be justified? The answer to that question lies in a dimly lit apartment on the edge of the city, where behind tightly drawn curtains a man is waiting for us with very uncomfortable documents. He smokes nervously, tapping ash into an overflowing coffee can, and asks us not to name him, not to film his face. A former developer of municipal software, today, one of those who leaks real architectural blueprints of smart cities into the public domain. On the table between us lie not glossy brochures with bike lanes, but dry technical zoning diagrams with thick red lines over a map of Oxford. The developer explains, in database terms, your cozy district is not a home, but an isolated cluster, and you within it are not a resident, but an object with a limited radius of action. Ecology here serves only as a bright wrapper for a new feudal system. Look at the document. Oxford's plan provides for a rigid division of the territory into 6 sectors. These are not the recommendations of urban planners. This is military topography. The essence of the reform is terrifying in its simplicity. You are physically prohibited from crossing a sector boundary in your private vehicle directly. To reach a neighboring district visible from your window, you are required to take the ring road, make a detour of dozens of kilometers, and return. The direct path is blocked not by barricades, but by cameras. But the system goes further, introducing the concept of a life limit. According to official documents, residents are issued a permit for stow days per year in which they may cross sector boundaries in their private vehicles. Think about that, stow days. Who determined this number? Which algorithm decided that exactly this much freedom is sufficient for you? This is a fundamental shift in the legal landscape. The presumption of freedom of movement is abolished. Henceforth, every movement you make is a privilege that the authorities graciously dispense by the card, like bread in besieged Leningrad. My interlocutor points to the next line in the table, fines. For each unauthorized crossing of the invisible sector boundary in British test zones, a charge of £7 is already levied. This is not merely a tax, it is a property qualification. For a wealthy person, it is a negligible toll road fee. For a courier, a nurse, or a teacher, it is financial catastrophe. The city becomes a layered cake in which mobility turns into a luxury accessible only to the elite. The most cynical thing about this scheme is that it is served up under the guise of concern for air quality. The developer laughs, a bitter, barking laugh. If ecology were truly the goal, city authorities would invest in electric buses and metro systems. Instead, the money goes toward installing thousands of license plate recognition cameras that ensure you do not leave your pen. This is not a fight against carbon. This is conditioning. They are training you to accept that your world is limited to 5 streets. The developer opens files of the global Zurich Cities network on his laptop. This group includes 96 megacities worldwide, from London to Melbourne. Their mayors have already signed agreements providing for the synchronized implementation of these protocols. We are witnessing the birth of a global standard. What is being tested on the British today will tomorrow become reality for residents of Moscow, Paris, and New York. The mechanism has been launched, and it runs like clockwork. On the screen appear charts with a chilling heading, Personal Carbon Quotas. In a number of European cities, systems are already being tested that assign each citizen a CO2 emission limit. This is a digital currency with which you pay for the right to live. You buy a plane ticket, The limit is exhausted. You want to pick up red meat at the supermarket, the system declines the transaction. You have already breathed your monthly quota. It sounds like paranoid delusion, but the technologies to implement it are already ready. The developer explains the principle of linking bank cards to a carbon tracker. When this system runs at full capacity, money will cease to be a universal medium of exchange. You can hold $1 million in your account, but if your carbon wallet is empty, you cannot even buy petrol to leave the city. This is absolute power over consumption and movement. We are watching how the noble idea of protecting the planet is turning into a tool of total micromanagement of human lives. You are persuaded that you are saving glaciers by foregoing a trip to see your parents. But in reality, you are simply reducing the load on infrastructure, saving budget funds for corporations. Your civil rights have been declared harmful emissions subject to reduction. The developer closes his laptop. A heavy silence settles over the room. He says the most terrible thing is not the fines, but the habituation. People adapt to unfreedom remarkably quickly if it is called a new normal or responsible consumption. The cage snaps shut not with a crash of iron, but to the quiet rustle of climate reports and approving likes on social networks. But if you think these technologies appeared only now for the sake of saving the climate, you are mistaken. The toolkit for the digital ghetto was refined long before the ecological agenda. Recall that ringing silence that settled over cities in the spring of 2020. Empty avenues, playgrounds sealed with tape, and the sense that time had stopped. Back then, sitting within four walls, you were certain. This is a temporary measure, necessary for survival. But for the system architect through whose eyes we are now looking at the monitors, it was the most large-scale stress test of total control infrastructure in history. The test succeeded, and no one dismantled the equipment. We have grown accustomed to thinking that the pandemic ended and we returned to normal life. This is a dangerous illusion. If we look at the code managing the urban environment today, we see the same algorithms that were running at the height of the lockdowns. Only the variables have changed. Instead of a viral threat, a carbon one is inscribed. And instead of the infected, a driver with high exhaust emissions. The mechanism for blocking access to the city was not dismantled. It was simply placed in standby mode. The security architect sees on his screens not concern for health, but the cold logic of asset repurposing. Drones that yesterday tracked quarantine violators in parks are today being fitted with gas analyzers to detect thermal anomalies and unauthorized picnics. Cameras trained to measure social distance are now being recalibrated to count passengers in your vehicle. The instrument created for an emergency has become the everyday inventory of utility services. In the classified analytical reports circulating in government offices, the term climate lockdown is appearing with increasing frequency. This is not conspiracy theory. It is a dry administrative scenario considered an extreme but permissible measure for reducing peak CO2 emissions. The logic is flawless. If we could lock the population in their homes to protect one person's lungs, why can we not do the same for the planet's lungs? To understand how this works economically, one need only look at Moscow's experience during the self-isolation period. The facial recognition and automated violation recording system then issued fines worth hundreds of millions of rubles, proving the effectiveness of contactless justice. The algorithm knows no mercy, takes no bribes, and hears no excuses. It simply deducts funds from your account if the geolocation of your phone does not match the permitted perimeter. But the most terrible legacy of that period is not the fines, but the psychological conditioning. We were trained to think that leaving home is not a right, but a privilege that must be earned or obtained through a digital pass. The QR code became the new passport. This neural pathway has already been laid in collective consciousness, and to activate it again, it is enough simply to change the color of a banner in an app. In the United States, meanwhile, predictive policing algorithms are being actively implemented. Artificial intelligence analyzes data arrays in advance and flags districts with a high probability of crime. Patrols are dispatched there before anything has happened, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy effect. The more police in a district, the more violations are recorded there. In the context of the smart city, this technology becomes an instrument of social segregation. Imagine, your navigation app plots a route not where it is faster, but where your trustworthiness rating permits you to drive. The algorithm is capable of blocking an old diesel vehicle from entering a green district by citing a non-existent traffic jam. We are witnessing the merger of medical, police, and ecological infrastructures into a single monolith, the zero-trust architecture that came from cybersecurity. In such a system, you are by default a threat, viral, criminal, or carbon-based, and you are obliged to prove your loyalty minute by minute through transactions, geotags, and biometrics in order to access the basic goods of civilization. History teaches us that temporary powers seized by authority in times of crisis almost never return to the people voluntarily. The infrastructure built for war against an invisible enemy proved too convenient and profitable to abandon. Now this digital perimeter is being cemented under the banner of saving the climate. Walls are no longer needed. Sensors have replaced them. Yet the West is still merely experimenting with these modules, hiding behind democratic procedures. To see the completed suppression machine operating at full power without any restraint, we must travel east, to where your face is the only key to the door, and your social rating determines whether you deserve to board a high-speed train. We move to Shenzhen, the world capital of hardware manufacturing. To an outside observer, it is a gleaming megacity of the future. But to a specialist gazing at monitors in a server room, it is the most large-scale loyalty testing ground in human history. Here, the smart city concept has reached its absolute, shedding the mask of service and exposing the face of the overseer. From the perspective of an open-source intelligence analyst, this city looks not like a collection of buildings, but like a continuous stream of metadata. A camera here is a vestigial organ. The infrastructure has stepped far beyond simple video recording. Metro turnstiles, residential complex entrances, payment in shops. Everything is tied to biometrics. Your face no longer belongs to you. It is a public encryption key that opens or blocks doors in the physical world. And if in the West you might be fined, here the system simply disconnects you from reality. The social credit system operates like a dry administrative utility. It is not a video game rating, but a dynamic redistribution of civil rights in real time. The algorithm continuously weighs your usefulness to the state. You cross the road on a red light, minus Piet points. You miss a loan payment, minus Dvaksat. You leave a critical comment on a social network. The rating drops below the critical mark, and the city reacts to this change instantly. According to China's National Public Credit Information Center, by 2023, more than 23 million people had been banned from purchasing tickets for aircraft and high-speed trains. Think about that number. The population of an entire European country has been locked within the radius of its own city, not by barbed wire, but by a line of code in a database. They are not prohibited from living. It is technically impossible for them to leave. This is the realization of the 15-minute city concept in its harshest totalitarian interpretation. You don't need walls when the station ticket window simply refuses to sell a ticket, citing an insufficient trustworthiness level. But visual control is only the first layer. The true depth of surveillance is hidden in the Internet of Things. Walking through Shenzhen at night, a tourist sees smart streetlight poles illuminating the way and distributing Wi-Fi. A professional knows these are multi-sensor hubs. Inside each such pole are microphones, gas analyzers, and MAC address scanners. They do not merely shine, they listen, smell, and feel the space around them around the clock. The gas analyzers detect the scent of specific chemicals indicating illicit drug or explosive manufacturing. Microphones with neural network filtering extract keywords from the conversations of passers-by, even when a highway roars nearby. And wireless network scanners record the unique identifier of your smartphone, linking a physical location to a digital identity. Anonymity in such a city is mathematically impossible. Even if you leave your phone at home and put on a mask, the system will not lose you. Gait recognition technology, developed by Chinese company Weitrix, identifies a person by movement biomechanics with 90% accuracy at distances of up to 50 meters. You can conceal your face, but you cannot change your skeleton and muscle memory. To the algorithm, you are a set of unique motion vectors, and this set is already in the monitoring database. At this moment, when you grasp the scale of the digital cage, it becomes clear. The right to information is the only thing we still have left. Algorithms already decide what you watch, and soon city algorithms will decide where you go. If you do not want your right to leave your home to depend on a hidden loyalty rating, subscribe to this channel right now. Do it while the subscribe button still works. Hit like to break the recommendation algorithm and spread this knowledge. The most frightening discovery of our architect is that this model is being actively exported. The safe city package solutions tested in China are already being purchased by the governments of Ecuador, Serbia, Pakistan, and a number of African countries. The technology is apolitical. It serves both the Communist Party and liberal democracy with equal effectiveness. The temptation to obtain a master switch that shuts down protest activity with a single press is too great for any government. We are seeing the convergence of two approaches. The West is building an infrastructure of restrictions under the banner of fighting the climate, creating zero-emission zones and 15-minute sectors. The East provides the technological filling, cameras, sensors, social scoring algorithms. When these two lines intersect, we will have the perfect prison, the Western ideology of carbon guilt multiplied by the Eastern efficiency of digital suppression. Yet every digital system, even the most perfect, has a fundamental vulnerability. The more complex the code, the more bugs it contains. The more centralized the management, the more catastrophic the consequences of a single failure. What a programmer writes can be hacked or break on its own. And when the keys to all the city's doors are stored on one server, that server becomes the most coveted target for those who disagree with the rules of the game. Imagine the situation. You are an exemplary citizen. Your rating is perfect. Your carbon footprint is minimal. You approach the door of a smart home. The lock does not open. Not because you are guilty of anything, but because somewhere in the cloud a failure occurred, or a hacker intercepted and substituted a data packet. We leave the sterile offices where our future is being designed and descend one level below, to where that future is cracking. The smell in this basement is a mix of cheap tobacco, old dust, and overheated plastic. This is not a resistance headquarters from a Hollywood action film, but the stuffy hardware room of a so-called white hat hacker who agreed to show us the underside of the smart city. On his monitors, not scrolling green lines of code as in the movies, but ordinary administrative panels. The hacker, whom we will call the locksmith, demonstrates the central paradox of the digital prison. The smarter the system, the more fragile it is. We are accustomed to fearing the dictator who will press the red button, but the locksmith insists, what you should fear is the moment the button presses itself. Look at this screen. This is a live feed from a smart doorbell in a suburban home. A woman is trying to get inside. The lock is not responding. This is not a broken spring or a lost key. This is a denial of service. The smart device's manufacturer has blocked the owner's account for an alleged violation of the terms of service. Think about this formulation. Your home is no longer your castle. In the era of the Internet of Things, you do not buy a lock. You subscribe to the right to enter your own door. If the algorithm deems your actions suspicious, or if the payment for cloud storage has failed, you will be left outside. Your physical access to your home now depends on a line of code on a server that may be located on another continent. Smart lock vulnerabilities are just the tip of the iceberg. The locksmith switches tabs, showing a map of city networks. Vulnerabilities in data transmission protocols allow attackers to seize control of entire city blocks. But even more frightening is when the system functions perfectly, yet draws false conclusions. A bug in the code becomes a new kind of natural disaster. In 2020 in Detroit, an incident occurred that should have tolled the death knell for blind trust in neural networks. Robert Williams was returning home from work when police surrounded him. In front of his wife and daughters, he was handcuffed and taken to the precinct. The reason? A facial recognition algorithm had found a match with a photo of a robber taken by a grainy surveillance camera. The officers did not even look carefully at the images. The computer had said, "Guilty." Williams spent 3 hours in a cell solely because the neural network made an error in the geometry of his cheekbones. This is not human error. It is a systemic failure of the architecture of justice. In the digital concentration camp, there is no presumption of innocence, only a probability percentage of a match calculated by the black box. The locksmith explains, "The problem is that we do not understand exactly how a neural network is trained. It is a black box that finds patterns invisible to humans, but sometimes these patterns are absurd. A shadow on a face can be interpreted as a bruise, a cane as a weapon. And unlike a living judge, it is impossible to argue with an algorithm. It has no ears to hear your alibi." The hacker opens the cybersecurity reports. The centralized databases of smart cities have become the primary target for ransomware attacks. Imagine, in 1 second, all of the city's traffic lights turn red, or, conversely, green. Chaos at intersections, ambulance services paralyzed. This is not a theoretical scenario. Attacks on municipal services have already led to the shutdown of water supplies and the disruption of hospital operations. When we unite critical infrastructure in a single network for the convenience of management, we create a single point of failure. One successful phishing email opened by a city hall clerk, and a million-strong city is without power and water. The locksmith laughs, but the laugh is nervous. The real threat is not malicious hackers like him, it is the absence of updates. Urban infrastructure is a layered pie of outdated code written decades ago, with modern additions stacked on top. These systems are incompatible, they conflict, and from these conflicts emerge bugs capable of killing. We are building a digital cage with locks made of rotten wood. The irony is that these very failures may be our only sip of freedom. In a world of total control, only chaos provides shelter. If a camera freezes, you are invisible. If the database goes down, you are free. But the elites building the new world are aware of this problem. Their answer is not to remove the technology, but to remove chaos in the human factor. Their solution is to build new cities from scratch, where the architecture itself eliminates the possibility of choice, because it eliminates the possibility of failure. We head to where concrete and code fuse into a single monolith. We leave behind the chaos of old megacities with their tangled alleyways and unpredictable intersections. This is the desert in Saudi Arabia, where right now the most ambitious and frightening engineering experiment in human history is unfolding. This is no longer an attempt to fix the old. It is the construction of a brave new world from a blank slate. A concrete scar cutting through the horizon. Before us is the project, the line. On satellite images, it looks like a rendering error, a dead pixel on the desert map. But this is reality. A single wall building, 170 kilometers long, with walls 500 meters high, taller than the Empire State Building, just 20 meters wide. Inside this artificial canyon, 8 million people are planned to live. 9 million souls sealed in a hermetic sarcophagus in the middle of a lifeless wasteland. The security systems architect sees here not an urbanism miracle, but perfect prison geometry. In an ordinary city, you have 360 degrees for movement. You can turn down an alley, cut through a park, slip away through courtyards. Here, all vectors of freedom have been physically eliminated. There are only two directions, forward and back. The line is not a metaphor, it is the only route, and the architecture itself operates like a conveyor belt from which you cannot step off of your own accord. Propaganda paints this as an ecological paradise. No vehicles, no exhaust fumes, a perfect microclimate. But the security specialist reads the blueprints differently. The absence of vehicles and roads means total dependence on a single, high-speed underground transport system, the so-called spine. In the event of social unrest, the operator in the control center only needs to press one stop button, and all the million people find themselves locked in their sectors. Walking kilometers across a scorching desert is physically impossible. This is zero-trust architecture made manifest in glass and steel. In old cities, control was layered over life. Cameras were hung on poles, turnstiles installed in metro stations. Here, control is poured into the foundation. You do not need police cordons if the city's very design provides no alternative paths. You live in a tunnel, and this tunnel is transparent from end to end. The life support system is centralized to the absolute. Water, food, purified air, all delivered artificially under the management of artificial intelligence. In the ordinary world, you can dig a well or grow potatoes at a dacha. In the line, this is physically impossible. You do not buy food, you subscribe to calories. Your biological survival directly depends on your digital status in the system. Human rights organizations, including Human Rights Watch, are already calling this project an architecture of violence. And this is not a figure of speech. The foundation of this utopian city is soaked in blood. The territory on which the line is being built belonged for centuries to the Huaytat tribe. When local residents refused to leave their homes for the construction project of the century, Saudi security services responded with harsh measures. There are reports of forced evictions, arrests, and even death sentences for those who dared stand in the path of the excavators. This is a critically important moment for understanding the logic of the future. The elites are prepared to use lethal force to clear the ground for the new order. The Huaytat tribe became the first victim, collateral damage in the war for efficiency. Their tragedy is a signal to all of us. In the city of the future, there is no place for those attached to the land, history, or traditions. There is room only for users willing to accept the terms of service. The walls of the line are covered in mirrored glass. From the outside, they reflect the desert, making the city invisible. But inside is an endless corridor of mirrors and sensors. The artificial intelligence managing the city knows not only where you are, but how much oxygen you have consumed, how much water you have used, and with whom you spoke in the elevator. In this sealed volume, any viral threat or social discontent is contained instantly. The sluice system allows any segment to be isolated within seconds. This is a perfect quarantine box, 76 kilometers long. Residents of the lower levels may never see actual sunlight, subsisting on artificial light and projections of the sky if their social rating does not permit them to ascend to the upper terraces. Many of you are thinking right now, well, that's Saudi Arabia, an Eastern despotism. That could never happen where we are. This is a dangerous misconception. The line is not a local whim of sheiks. It is a proving ground, a showroom for technologies that will then be sold to Europe and America. Total control technologies are tested where human rights do not interfere with the experiment, so they can then return to us under the brand Safe City Dva Nol. We are witnessing the death of classical urbanism. The city is no longer a space of spontaneous interaction among free people. It is becoming a service. And a service has an administrator capable of blocking an account at any moment. In an ordinary city, that is an inconvenience, but in the line in the middle of a scorching desert, disconnection from the life support system is equivalent to a death sentence. So the walls have been built, the sensors installed, the routes blocked. You have no car to drive away. You have no cash to buy food from a neighbor. All you have is a QR code. But even in the strictest prison, inmates find ways to exchange. The shadow economy is freedom's last bastion. The builders of the New World know this. Therefore, the final blow will be struck not against walls, but against your pockets, against money that is capable of denying you service. I am in the Financial Monitoring Operations Center, and on the screen before me, a red line is flashing. Transaction declined. Invalid geolocation. This is not a technical malfunction, not an insufficient account balance. This is the new reality in which your money functions only where you are permitted to be. We have grown accustomed to treating money as the universal equivalent of freedom. If you have cash, you can buy bread, petrol, or a train ticket, and the seller does not care who you are or where you are from. But the concept of central bank digital currencies, CBDC, destroys this axiom. We are witnessing the birth of programmable money, a financial instrument that more closely resembles food stamps in a maximum security colony. It is important to understand the fundamental distinction. This is not cryptocurrency. Bitcoin was created by cypherpunks for anonymity and independence from the state. CBDC is its polar opposite, created for total surveillance, a direct channel between your wallet and the central bank's server, bypassing commercial banks, and most importantly, bypassing your right to privacy. Here, in the code of smart contracts, the very 15-minute city is being implemented, but now at the level of transactions. Technically, nothing prevents a condition from being written into the digital ruble or digital euro. This token is valid only within 5 kilometers of the owner's registered address. You try to pay for an electric vehicle charge in a neighboring sector? Declined. The system registers a violation of the isolation regime. This sounds like paranoid dystopia, but the mechanisms have already been tested. In 2021, Nigeria launched the e-Naira, one of the world's first state digital currencies. The authorities began artificially restricting the circulation of cash, driving people into digital money. The result? Burning banks, street barricades, social explosion. People understood that what was being taken from them was not merely paper notes, it was sovereignty. Geotags are only the first circle of hell. The next function baked into CBDC architecture is an expiry date on money. Economists call this demurrage or negative interest rates. Imagine, your salary automatically burns away if you have not spent it within 30 days. You cannot save. You cannot build a financial safety cushion. You are obliged to spend, turning the wheel of the economy. Such a system transforms a citizen into the perfect consumer slave. You lose the ability to save up for an escape or for protest, and you live from tranche to tranche. If you disagree with policy, your digital wallet can be switched off with a single button press. In Canada, during the trucker protests, we already saw account freezes, but with CBDC, this will happen automatically, without judicial involvement. An even more sinister aspect is the itemization of purchases. Cash leaves no traces. The digital dollar sees not just the total on the receipt, but every item in your basket. The system can prohibit you from buying meat if you have exceeded your monthly carbon limit, or alcohol if the healthcare algorithm decides you are in a risk group. The term programmable poverty is no longer the domain of conspiracy theory. Social welfare payments can be tagged with a target code. This money can only be spent on utilities and basic goods, but it is technically impossible to transfer it to another person or invest it in education. This is the creation of a caste financial system in which the money of the elite and the money of an ordinary citizen possess different physical properties. Look at the implementation map. 130 countries representing 98% of global GDP are now developing their own versions of CBDC. The European Central Bank, the US Federal Reserve, the People's Bank of China, all are participating in this race. The goal is singular: to eliminate cash, because cash is the last uncontrolled zone where anonymous human activity is possible. The argument is always the same: fighting money laundering, terrorism, tax evasion, convenience, and security. You don't need to carry a wallet, just smile into the camera. But the price is this: in a world of CBDC, every transaction you make is a request for permission, which the system can approve or decline. The trap has snapped shut. We have taken apart all the elements, from the concrete blocks on Oxford streets to the invisible chains of the blockchain. The walls of the line constrain the body. Biometrics control behavior. Programmable money controls the will. If you have no resources to resist, you will not resist. Digital starvation sets in instantly the moment your identifier is added to the blacklist. Look at this dawn. From a bird's-eye view, the awakening megacity looks majestic and serene. Streams of cars pour into the arteries. Pedestrians fill the sidewalks, like blood cells in the arteries of a living organism. Just yesterday, this picture seemed like a symbol of progress. But now, after we have exposed the underside of the digital perimeter, this landscape evokes not admiration, but cold anxiety. We see not morning traffic. We see the movement of data packets inside a rigidly prescribed protocol, where any deviation from the route is a systemic error subject to immediate correction. Our investigation began with smashed cameras on the streets of Oxford, where people were physically demolishing what they considered instruments of surveillance. At the time, it seemed like a localized rebellion against fines. But having passed through server halls and studied the architecture of the line under construction, we understood barricades are useless. The real walls being erected around us are woven from lines of code, biometric sensors, and the terms of user agreements that we accept without even reading them. The 15-minute city concept turned out to be merely a beautiful wrapper for embedding zero-trust architecture into civilian life. We have grown accustomed to thinking that the presumption of innocence is a basic right. But in the logic of digital governance, it is considered a vulnerability. The system works on the inverse principle: you are a suspect from the outset. To open the door of your building entrance, buy a coffee, or board the metro, you must prove your trustworthiness every second. Your face, your gait, your carbon footprint, and your transaction history, these are keys that can be revoked at any moment. And what is frightening is not that Big Brother is watching you. What is frightening is that a cold, indifferent algorithm is watching, and with it you cannot negotiate. The true price of the comfort being sold to us under the guise of ecological concern and safety is the total surrender of anonymity. We are voluntarily trading the unpredictability of freedom for guaranteed service. It is convenient when the navigation app plots a route around traffic jams. But what if tomorrow it refuses to take you to a district declared off limits for your status? It is convenient when money arrives in your account instantly. But what if that money is programmable code prohibiting the purchase of a train ticket because you have exceeded this month's travel limit? This is not the dystopia of the distant future. It is the administrative reality already being tested in pilot zones from China to Europe. Technology has no morality. A facial recognition camera is just an instrument, like a hammer. But if the hammer is in the hands of an architect who sees people as merely chaotic variables to be ordered, lived-in space transforms into a maximum security prison without bars. The walls become invisible, but no less solid for that. Escaping the digital perimeter is far more difficult than climbing over a fence. Right now, we are at the bifurcation point. The system has not yet closed completely. We still have cash. We still have the ability to disable geolocation. We still have the right to vote. But the window of opportunity is rapidly narrowing. The elites advancing these changes are counting on our inertia and exhaustion. They know if a person is offered a choice between security and freedom, the majority will choose security. And if that security is packaged in a convenient smartphone app, we ourselves will line up for our digital collars. Moreno offered the world the concept of the 15-minute city. Do you consider this a sincere vision or a trap from the very beginning?